Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today I'm here with Emily Schneider. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Emily is a seasoned visual storyteller with nearly 2 decades of experience in marketing and branding. With a passion for transforming complex ideas into captivating PowerPoint presentations, she combines strategic storytelling with eye-catching design to empower clients to deliver their messages confidently and impactfully. Very unique niche. So, what made you want to get into being a visual storyteller?
That is a great question. So it's kind of the evolution of my whole career journey. I studied visual communications, graphic design, and art history in college, and I graduated with the desire to be a designer in some field or some way. And I started really my career in the advertising agency. I worked for Shopper Marketing, which is working on campaigns and promotions that happened at point of purchase specifically. So working with a lot of CPG brands and helping to create engagements and ways for their consumers to be excited to buy their product, give reason to share new news, those kind of things. And I realized that, part of that process as I worked my way through the agency life was you had to sell your stuff into your clients. And I loved being able to see how my clients responded. That was something that was missing from just general marketing, because you don't really know how your clients react. You know if sales go up, but you don't really know if what you said or what you did at shelf made an impact in their decision, or right? You don't really have, unless there's a big consumer journey testing, their journey, but you don't really know, and you don't get that feedback right away. And there was just something really magical I loved about being part of that storytelling. I've always been a storyteller. I think that's what connects us. I think that's how we as humans just can share and empathize and just relate to each other. And so the fact that I can bring my skill set of visual storytelling to life, and it's kind of the sweet spot that I love. It's really helped me bring my business to life and do the things I love. And I believe if I'm going to work hard, I got to love what I do. So
absolutely.
how I got
100%. 100% agree with you. So I love that you say, that you really focus on storytelling, because there's so much of sales and presentations that I feel like they're just reiterating a thing. They're working so hard on these are the benefits, and this is, why you want to buy our product or our service. But storytelling really does pull it all together. And I think that's what I love the most about doing sales for my company, is that when people are talking to me about my company and my services, I'm telling the story of the business. I'm like the very last thing that I focus on is what we do. I focus 90% on why we do it, why I got started, what inspired me. And all of those things are what really grab the person who's listening, and it gets them to buy in to what you're saying, because nobody cares. What is this saying? Nobody cares what you do unless they know that you care or how you feel.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just feel like that's part of the journey, part of, we're not just a security company. We are, a woman-owned business I had 20 years of bad experiences in a particular, area, and I decided to solve a problem. And people love that because they're like, I get that. Like, I've wanted to solve problems before too. And, I never had the guts to go in and do my own company. And so it just kind of gives them that ability to say, yeah, I get it. I get why you're doing what you do.
Yeah, and we don't remember what people say. We remember how they made made us feel.
Yes.
And so stories are that connection. They're, to your point, they give us the why. They give us that human touch. They allow us to relate, to see ourselves. You tell me facts, and I kind of remember facts. I don't really remember, but I remember stories. I remember, again, think about just in your memories, it's stories, it's these feelings, it's this emotional tie. It creates that trust, that credibility, and it gives you a differentiator, and you become memorable. And when we can remember stories and we connect to them, we're more likely to do and act upon them. Yeah, there's so much power in a well-crafted story. So that's awesome to hear. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's especially in sales and
Hmm.
introducing who you are and what you do and getting people to believe you and to
Yeah.
trust you. So
Yeah. I mean, we've had so many salespeople come through the company, and I always feel like the worst person to bring in is somebody who's a seasoned salesperson, because generally they stick so much to this is what we do, these are the services, this is the product, this is the pricing, do you want to buy it or not? Right. And so I think the people who can come in with just a whole different background, they're not as it's not as intimidating. You don't feel like you're being sold to. Like I don't like to be in a sales meeting where I feel like I'm being sold to. I want to be in a meeting where I feel like I'm having a great conversation and I'm learning something and somebody is inspiring me to want to do business with them. Those are the people I want
yeah,
to do business with.
I always say you want to collaborate, right? You don't want to be
Yeah.
talked to, you want to talk with. And that's what I love.
Hmm.
And I think that is so powerful about presentations versus marketing. Marketing is a one-to-many conversation.
Yeah.
The brand talks to you, you don't really get to talk back, you don't really get to engage, you just kind of have to respond. Or I mean,
Hmm.
now with social media, people can respond to it, but like you're not really in that like in depth, like let's hear each other's points of view. And sales meetings are one-on-one conversations, especially to your point, when they're done right, you
Yeah.
can hear what your client needs and you can cater your story and your pitch to hit exactly what their pain points are. And isn't that like, we all want help. We all like, especially when you're in a sales meeting, when you've raised your hand, when you've called somebody and you need their service, there's something you need. And so when somebody can answer that, it helps make your life and your job easier. And that's the win. That's the goal.
Absolutely, 100%. So, I love that you've really focused on this presentation style, because um, presentations are a challenge, and I have to do presentations from time to time, and there's a what's the phrase, death by PowerPoint.
Yep.
So tell me how to avoid death by PowerPoint, because we all get into those situations where we have to do a presentation, and some of us are not great talking in front of people, and so they end up sitting up there and reading slide by slide, and there's a whole book of text on a
Yeah.
given slide. So tell me how to
And
avoid death by PowerPoint.
yeah, I mean, that's exactly what death by PowerPoint is, right?
Yeah.
It's where you show up and you're like, this could have been an email. This could have been
Right.
something I read on my own. It's a document. There's no feeling. There's no empathy. There's no story. There's no personal touch.
Yes.
And so how do you combat that? You take your time when you
Mm,
develop your presentation. The first step is really knowing your audience and what you want them to think, feel, and do. So we're talking really simply from the beginning, having a groundwork of what that end goal is. So you can write your story, or you can set it up with the right slides to tell that story. And then it's crafting your narrative. And just like in a traditional story, right, we lay the groundwork, we set up who the characters are, what we're here for, why we want them to do something. And we
mhm.
create this like kind of emotional connection. And then in the middle, you give all the facts, you really support it. You give your reasons to believe, your benefits. It's kind of, again, all that traditional sales content of this is what we do, this is how we've done it. And then the end, you summarize that, and you remind them of why you're here, and you remind them of what you want them to do next. Do they have questions? Would they like to know more about your pricing? Would they like to have another conversation, meet more people? And when you can simplify those two steps before you even get into your presentation, you've already aligned yourself with a really simple, strong story. You know your why, you know what you, again, who they are and what you want them to do. And so you've already kind of eliminated a lot of that death by PowerPoint, because when you over communicate, when you don't have that clarity to begin with, you share too much, you say too
Yeah.
much, you tell too much, and that's part of death by PowerPoint. When it comes to designing the slides, now that you have your story crafted, it's really hitting on some really basic principles. Be intentional with your slides. Keep it to 1 to 2 key takeaways per slide. Don't overload it. And give
Mm,
yourself space, white space, blank space, full color. That really helps balance your audience to listen and see what you're saying, because your slides should be the background music to what you're saying. They should be supporting it. They shouldn't be your script. If you're reading from your slides, you don't have a presentation. You
yeah.
have like a booklet, and nobody's going to listen, and our brains can't even function. They can't take in all that information at the same time. We
Yeah.
can process images though 60,000 times faster than words. So the more words you put up there, the
Wow.
less they're going to digest. The more images, the more you design it, the more likely they are to remember and to feel and to think about something. It's kind of an amazing, like our brains do a lot of the work for us. So
Yeah.
we should ride on that wave. Um, the other thing to be really intentional about is you're being simple and consistent when it comes to font, copy, and then with visuals. So when it comes to text,
Hmm.
choosing 1 to 2 fonts.
Mm-hmm.
When you write headlines, make them succinct, give them, say what that slide is supposed to do or what the person's supposed to digest. Don't just say summary, say recap of the Q4, right? Like you give them more detail so they understand what they're going to be learning about or reading about or hearing about. And make your bullets short and
Mm.
simple. I mean,
Yeah.
30 words is ideally on a page if you can get there. I know sometimes it's not, but when you have, again, too many words, people don't know what to do with it and they don't hear it. They read it and then they tune out because it's information overload at that point. So the less you have up there and the more it's key and kind of bulleted points in terms of copy and content, it allows your audience to follow along with your voiceover. And that's where the emotional connection comes in. So you really can kind of connect those two really well. And then again, we said like using simple fonts and 1 to 2 styles as well. But also when you think about headlines, how are they treated? Are they always in the same spot? Are they all caps? Are they lowercase? Same when it comes to content, subheads, bulleting. You want to match treatments along the page and styles. Our brains will do this amazing job of putting the pieces together if we set it up properly. And when you're simple and consistent, our brains are really good at connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And similarly approached when it comes to visuals. So keep consistent in terms of if you use photography, does it feel like it's from the same photo shoot? Are they stylized the
Mm.
same? And if not, a little trick is turning them black and white. It lets your image shine without the colors or that saturation or the differences to really show. When it comes to data, simplifying your data, using the same colors when you talk about similar concepts or content is a really good way to streamline information. Let your brain do the heavy lifting. Do you have to communicate all the data points at all the time? Or does the bar chart show the evolution of over a period of time, but I don't have to know every number along the way?
Mm-hmm.
Simplifying that information allows your audience to see the bigger picture without getting caught up in the details. And those simple things, when it comes to designing your data, allow your audience to listen to you and to be engaged with what you're offering, so that at the end, when they're ready to do something or ask questions, it's not about go back, I'm confused. It's their takeaways are getting you to the right conversation to move your business forward. I apply that same principle with illustrations and icons. Pick one style. Don't mix and
Yeah.
match. Even with transitions, sometimes don't use transitions. It's an overload. We think we're wowing people, but we're actually causing confusion. So simplicity and consistency are critical when it comes to eliminating death by PowerPoint.
Oh my gosh, that's such great advice. Thank you so much for all of that. So, you brought up photos, and this is one thing that I really kind of struggle with because, in my mind, I think, well, people are visual learners. They need to see graphs and they need to see photos, but you can overdo it on graphs, don't you think?
I think you can overdo it on everything. I think it's a
Yeah.
balance, and you got to be, again, it comes back to really the 3 principles I live by them in my whole life, but really when it comes to my design work is simplicity, consistency, and intentionality. Images
Mm.
have to be intentional. Data graphics have to be intentional and used. If you just put a pie chart out because you have
Hmm.
numbers, are you really telling the story? I'm actually working with a client right now on some data information, and we were just talking about like I was like, I don't feel like we're designing the data. And it's like, no, because the data is baked in. But when we connect the pictures or the right type of data or the way we design, I mean, simply designing numbers really big with the support, the 70% of all people agree that this is the right choice. That 70% is bigger and that little support copy is smaller. That's designing with intention your data.
Mm.
If you put it in a pie chart, does it do the same impact as if you just see that 70% number? You got to be intentional with how and what you share, to help connect those dots for for sure.
Wow, that's really great. So because I think about this all the time when I'm going through a PowerPoint and I'm trying to design, my brain will get stuck on those things like, okay, this was all capitalized, now this is not, and you're using periods after these bullet points, but you're not using them after these bullet points. And like I will get stuck on those little intricacies when somebody's doing a presentation for me, and I'm like, why did they, so a well done presentation allows you to truly focus on the message, because if you're like me and you get caught up on the details and that stuff becomes a distraction, then you're taking away from a message. And I really do feel like some people just get stuck on those things, and I'm one of those who I get
Me
stuck on the
too. Me too.
details.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you
and
don't
and
listen
I'll
to it. And
focus on that and I'll disregard the message because I'm like, why didn't they just, why did they use a different font? And you can tell that was copy and pasted because it's totally different than everything else.
you lose credibility and trust with your presenter. Not only are you now disengaged and you're not listening
Yes.
to them, but you don't have their brand persona is so important, and
Yes.
it shows in that. And again, as a small business owner, I work with a lot of smaller businesses. It's really important that they show up, that they create that trust, again, whether external or internal. The little details make a difference. Now, that can be stuff you can streamline at the end.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think, like, when you're building your presentation, you don't want to get caught into it. But one of my biggest tips is plan ahead.
Right.
And you got to give yourself time, because the death by PowerPoint, the over communication, thinking I'm showing my knowledge, is actually, to me, a sign of like, I didn't plan for this and I crammed it in at the last minute, and you miss all those things. Now, again, it's not going to be perfect. I just looked at something today and I was like, oh, that page number is jumped, right? Like, we all
Yeah.
we're humans, but in the bigger scheme of things, to your point, it's really obvious when all of a sudden you're like, why is that font different? Or why are you using green when every time you talked about this is red? And now my brain is creating this own story, because we're naturally going to create stories. We naturally, as we listen, we start to connect it to ourselves. And so the more you can keep your audience engaged and connected, or their thoughts about what you're sharing, is always a win.
Yeah, 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 100%. So yeah, because I think about that too. And then sometimes I think people overuse stock photos. And then I'm like, but I'm not seeing, like, if you have a brand, right? And I'm a big believer in stick with your brand, brand, like lead with the brand, be consistent with the brand. And then all of a sudden you throw in a couple stock photos, you're like, well, that's not consistent, or it looks weird. So I'm curious because you have these two different types of photos. Like you have stock photos that are like professional models doing very regimented things and everything is perfect in the photo. And then you have the real life photos. Like, for example, I have an event staffing company, right? So events are never perfect. It's not going to be a cloudy day, or somebody's shirt is partially untucked, or, the radio is a little off center, whatever it is. But I'll try to take a photo of my employees, and it's not perfect the way a stock photo is, but it's real. So do you go for real or do you go for perfect?
So I think it really depends on what you're looking for. And to be honest, I don't think it's so much about, one, it's quality. So as long
Uh-huh.
as the image is crisp and it's shot kind of from a natural tone, I think it's great. And sometimes stock photos are really obvious that they're stock photos, to your
Right.
point, and like they're not good. But it's really about focusing in and cropping your images to hero what you want. And then I don't
Mm.
think the details are as in that bigger scheme of things, it's not as important. Like, when you talk about a stock photo, I just did one where it was about contracts, and it
Okay.
didn't matter if I saw the person's back or what I saw, but it was about their relationship. And if you have the right moment captured and you can crop in on that, the rest of it doesn't matter. And it becomes either area for your copy to go, or you can crop it in a beautiful way. But I think it's really, to me, I would use the crops as a way, or a cropping, to really create, again, that intentional and that simplicity and that focus, and not about the details. But I think there's a time and place for both,
Yeah.
and consistency. So if you're going to use some of your own shots, use your own shots.
Yeah.
The worst is when clients suggest stuff, and I'm like, I'm happy if you send it from your phone, but like, don't down-res it. Just like send it, because our phones take great photos, but you then don't intermix with stock photos, or kind of try and find images that feel a little bit more raw or a little bit more messy, if you will. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, because I love using pictures of our actual staff, and at
sure.
events, but they're never perfect, right? You're never going to find that perfect photo when you're at an event and you're dealing with real people who, they're not going to have that perfect model
Yeah,
persona,
of course.
but the stock photos don't feel relatable to me, so I guess it really
Yeah,
depends on what you're trying to say and what you're conveying. I guess makes a big difference.
totally.
Um, so when you're telling a story, how do you engage the audience from the beginning? Because I've heard all kinds of different things, like you start with a joke, or you start with a visual aid, or you start with this. How do you grab somebody's attention from the beginning?
So that's a really good question. I actually don't coach on presenting. I just
Mhm.
coach on and help fine tune scripts or the
Okay.
story. But I think the biggest point is I think how whatever you're most comfortable with is the win. If it's a joke, if it's a tip, if it's whatever feels a video, whatever feels right. The biggest win is you have to tell people why they're there and what you want them to do.
Mm,
However that comes in. And that could be right before the joke, it could be during the joke, it could be after the joke. But if you don't level set of why we're all here and what our goal is, nobody's going to know what to do, and then they're feeling lost the whole way and they're kind of trying to figure it out. It's that idea. I was just listening to something today about parenting, and like when you have boundaries and you give your kids the container that they can work in, they feel safer and they know what
yeah,
to expect. And so I think we have to approach our conversations or our business meetings the same way. Just like when you set a meeting, usually for an internal thing, you put an agenda that helps
right.
people know what to expect. And so I think you have to say why we're here, what the goal is. And it can be you don't may necessarily have to have a slide, but you want to make sure you voice that over and be natural and human about it. But it all comes back to knowing your audience and what you want them to think, feel, and do. And when you have that laid out, you kind of have your entry of grounding that. And again, we live in a chaotic world. So I don't know about you, but I'm always running into a meeting from something else. So I need that
Yeah.
reminder of like, okay, we're here to do this, to review this, to talk about this. It's so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were saying that, it reminded me of like, kind of that tell people what they're going to learn and what they're going to get out of that. So like when you start a meeting, like, hey, we're here to review our 2024 revenue and to see what we're going to be planning for in 2025 to set our goals and to blah, blah, blah. So you kind of tell them why we're here, what we're going to do, and then what the result is that you want to have at the end. Is that right?
Exactly. Because think about it, if not, if you just jumped in, you're like, okay, welcome. And then it's like, okay, here's our 2024 goals. People are like,
Yeah.
well, what? Okay, great. Now what? Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing with this? I don't, what am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be like? How am I supposed to be connecting the dots in my own brain of what you're trying to tell me so I can do something or learn? So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and when you're talking about connecting the dots in your brain, that really it really resonates with me. And the reason is because I feel like when I don't have a dot to connect, my brain will make up whatever the dot is, and that may or may not be accurate. So I know people who are kind of overthinkers will do the same thing. Like we're filling in the gaps with what we believe and not necessarily what we're being told. And you want to keep that out. Like you should always make sure that like when people are talking about you or your reputation, you give them the content you want them to believe.
Exactly. I like to use the term I help my clients become conversation conductors. So
Mm,
just like when you go to an orchestra and the conductor stands on stage and he tells and he guides the instruments and the symphony to create this harmonious experience, that's what you should do as a presenter. You should use your slides and your script and your audience to create this experience by showing them and playing, and giving them the cues that they need to feel this experience or to feel this, yeah, I guess experience is the right word, but to be connected and to listen intently. And so you have to lay the groundwork, and then you have to set the beats and give them the right information at the right time so that they can carry it along. If not, you're giving them everything and they have to figure out how to make this work, to your point, and whether it's right or wrong. But if you can guide them along in the right way, they're going to do exactly what you need them to do, and they're going to be informed and they're going to be ready, and they're going to feel more empowered and they're going to feel heard. And we know that that is how we drive success.
yeah, that's beautiful. I love that analogy, because you're right. It is very much like you're just weaving it through. So, versus an information dump, where
Yes.
you
Yeah.
just kind of bombard somebody with a whole bunch of information and then they have to figure out how this all goes together.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Very cool. So what advice do you give to your entrepreneurs and your business owners when it comes to developing a story that resonates? Because it's hard as a business owner. You want to talk about what you do. So how do I develop a compelling story?
It goes back, you kind of said it's the why. Why are we
Yeah,
here? Why do I want to help people? What is my value? So I think you start internally and then you reflect it out. So start with like why I want to do this, and then flip it to be about why you're going to help them, or what's the value for your listener. Because really, if you talk about all I, they're not engaged. But if you talk about them and the
right.
reason you're helping them, or the value, or how you make their life easier and better, they're all in. Everybody wants a little tip on how to succeed. So I think it gets really into that, those cause and effects, and that, and getting back to the root cause of who you are, what you do, why you do it, and then flipping it so it's audience centric.
Okay, very cool. So how do you deal with those who are not good at presenting? Because that's a scary thing for some people. How do you get
Well,
over
I
that?
Yeah, so I hope that because of the work that I do with my clients, and I usually have a 10-day minimum from kickoff to final delivery, that
Hmm.
gives them the time to really digest and get excited about their content. And when I work with them, I help simplify, right? We help elevate that visual story. So they're so excited to talk about it. It makes more sense. It matches up with how they feel or what they're going to say. And so that confidence kind of is a natural cause of the work that we've done.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because that's one thing that I hear all the time of like, I don't like to present, I feel nervous, I don't like to talk in front of people. But I think if you're talking about something that is within your wheelhouse or your comfort zone, it does make it 10 times easier. You just have to get comfortable with the information.
Yeah, you got to get comfortable. You got to practice those kind of things for sure.
Yeah, practicing for sure. I think that that's a really big deal. And then also practice in front of like a Zoom. And this is one thing I was doing before I would do any kind of public speaking is I'd record myself on Zoom and then I'd watch it back and be like, oh, I need to stop saying and I need to stop doing this. And you realize certain things about your, I guess, your behaviors that you overlook pretty easily.
Sure, I do that with podcasting. I go back and I
Yeah,
listen, and you're like, yeah, you get a little cringy, but you always learn. And that's the other thing is like, you could don't. I am always a big believer of like, do
yeah.
it, and then you can figure out and you can learn, and you're always going to be better. But the first time, of course, it's going to feel yucky and gross. Even the first time you use content, and one of the reasons I love PowerPoint as a medium is it allows my clients to continue to evolve their presentation. So we might work together to create their pitch deck, but as they use it a few times, they might realize that, okay, I'm going to flow this a little different, or I don't need to say this, or my data is updated and I can hit on this point better. And they can go in and update it. And then they still feel really good about it because it starts to evolve as they evolve, as they share that.
Yeah, very cool. So, what key elements of a successful PowerPoint presentation should we all be including?
So I think it all starts with knowing your audience, taking time to craft your story. And I always suggest crafting it offline. So use Post-it notes, use Sharpie, get your outline, your ideas written out. You'll start to see this natural flow or how things can fit together. And then you can come to the presentation. And I think it's really about, again, once you know your audience, you'll know what information to keep, what to highlight, what that goal is. And so you can craft the information per slide with that intention. So it's an overall intention approach and then an individual slide specific intention.
Ah, very cool. Yeah, I think that's the hard part for people is, just getting down to how do I condense all of the things that I want to say, but you've got to put them into a short amount, like a small amount of information so that it's not just rambling on about things just because you know them.
Yes. And I also am a big believer, like I don't restrict slide counts. So I think you're better off to have more slides with less on them, because again, it slows you down as a presenter and it gives you time to talk about the right things. And then you'll start to see if you really need that when you start to break it out. That's why 2 to 3 things, the most key takeaways on a slide, really help. So if you need to divide slides up, divide them up, because
Oh,
then you'll start to see what's actually important too.
yeah, love
And
that.
and our brains again digest information so having a slide change gives your audience something, a cue that something has changed and I need to pay attention, or it's new and I want to listen again, re
So
tune in.
what is the like you said you don't restrict slide counts. That's totally makes sense because you're right. I think too much information on a slide is just going to keep you stuck there, and then that can lead to kind of a disjointed, you're not flowing through the whole thing. So what is the ideal time for a presentation?
So again, I think it's all dependent on where you are, who your audience is, what you're sharing. I've been talking to somebody and they had 100 slides in 10 minutes, but because of the
Wow.
way that they talk and their story and the type of slides, that felt good. But another guy used 10 slides in 30 minutes
Okay.
because of the story. So I think it really depends on what you're comfortable with and what you need and how you're sharing. And again, I think when you know how long you have, you can put your information in properly. I, from experience, did a masterclass and I tried to cram everything in too short of time and I felt rushed. So I was like, okay, next time we're going to do this longer because I
Okay.
don't want to take information away, but I need to give people time to digest it and me to talk through it slowly, right? You don't want to be like not only yelling at people, but like rushing them through. They're not going to pay attention anyway. So I think it's really a balance and it's knowing your audience, knowing where you're delivering, how it's going to be interpreted and how you can showcase what you need to say.
Very cool. So what were some of the mistakes that people make in their PowerPoint presentations?
Going back to the death by PowerPoint, way too many points on a slide,
Yeah.
different fonts, using all different types of styles and colors and choices, over designing, especially because we have some beautiful templates out there
Yeah.
that you can pull from, and now with like AI and stuff, and they're great, but are they highlighting and focusing on the thing you want? So they might take your headline and put it really cool at the bottom, but like that's not going to be relevant to your audience. They're going to have a hard time finding it. And then over animation. I think animation sometimes, again, people think the wow factor helps elevate, but it actually just causes confusion.
Yeah, and it's distracting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Sometimes all the noises and the whipping back and forth, you're like, yeah, just show me what you're trying to show me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So okay, very cool. So when you started your business, what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome in starting your business?
So the first thing I think is just the awareness. So when
Mm,
I've been a freelancer for 5 years, so I've kind of worked for myself for I guess 6 years now.
yeah.
And then a year ago when I niched myself, it was really just telling people this is what I do and this is how I help people. As a general designer, creative director, people know that title. They know that you do creative work, but they don't know how to use you. But when I can say I do PowerPoint design and I help leaders, you know, with their information and I make concise, impactful presentations that resonate properly with their audience, they're like, oh, I use PowerPoint. I have something to
Mm-hmm.
tell. I need help, right? Versus just I'm a creative designer and I design marketing materials. Like, what does that mean? So
Yeah.
I think for me, it was an awareness factor and it was doing the work to tell people. And it was kind of getting out of my own way because sometimes that's really hard to tell people, hey, I'm available or I need work. I still have a hard time and I still do it every month where I reach out to some of my favorite clients if I haven't heard from them, and it's been a little bit and I'll say, or at the end of the quarter, I did it last year at the end of the year and was like, okay, I'm looking ahead. You don't want to, there's a little bit of vulnerability, but that's the beauty of the work I do is I get the flexibility of a freelance project. So projects come in, projects go out. So I got to keep that funnel going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's raising my hand, to be honest, and saying, I might not know all the answers, but I can figure it out, whether it's for myself or it's with my client's request, and having communities and teams of people who you can rely on who can help process or answer questions or just be a voice. Because when you're running your own business and you're doing it all, it's very
Mm.
overwhelming. It
Yeah, it
still
can
is.
be for sure. And
Yeah.
having just a sounding board is so critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, just somebody to run ideas by who doesn't have a personal vested stake, like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's a spouse or family member, like sometimes you need an outside perspective where they're not just going to tell you what they think you want to hear, they're going to tell you what you need to hear. That is one of the most invaluable parts of business to me.
And I think even going a step further, like I'm part of a bunch of different communities. So I'm part of an
Yeah,
entrepreneurs group for women in my local town. I'm part of a
yeah,
marketing cohort. So I'm learning how to market with other people who do totally different businesses. I'm actually in a small business or a presentation design community for people who are building their presentation businesses. So finding
yeah.
like-minded people doing similar work, but like-minded people doing different work it's, yes, to your point, it opens that sounding board, because my husband has great ideas. We just had a great conversation this week, and I'm like, you have so much passion and great ideas, but like, it doesn't work always like that, or you don't
Right.
get it because you don't own a business or you're not doing all the things. So having people who can kind of push and pull you in all the ways, I think it's that well-roundedness, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm the same way. Like I'll have I have like a women's group that I belong to, and sometimes they give me really great advice, and then sometimes I go to, like, I'll talk to M&A people just about
Mhm.
like funding and like what makes sense for growth, and not because I'm trying to, merge or acquire, but because that advice is vastly different than what I'm going to get from my people in my industry. So
Exactly.
yeah, I know. I think it's really important to have that diversity of thought when it comes to problem solving.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, for sure.
Hmm. So, how do you measure success of a presentation? Like, I just finished a presentation and I get tons of questions, or I finish a presentation, I get no questions. What is better?
I always think questions are better, especially when
Yeah.
they're the questions that are guiding you to the decision you want. So if a client who had an investor meeting, right? Like, they weren't, the goal was to update their investors and get them to continue funding with them. And so
Yeah.
when they afterwards, when they're not having questions about show me that data or I'm confused, but it's more of let's talk about the long-term plan, or that was so interesting that we invested in this way. How do we repeat that? It's the quality and the quantity of questions, I think, that are really important. Yes, for sure. Questions are the best. Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No questions means, I think, you like, who are you? Did anybody listen? Did they pay
Yeah, yeah.
attention? I
Well,
feel like
I'm
that in
like,
my
was I
reviews.
that good that I just answered all their questions, or
Right.
was I that confusing where they're just like, I need a minute to think about all this, right? And so yeah, I always like wonder, like, should I be thankful for questions, or does that mean I didn't do a good job of explaining it? Like, I always wondered about that.
I think questions are good. I mean, even in myself, when somebody tries to sell me something and I'm like, okay, I'm good. And you can tell they're like wanting questions, you know you're not interested. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But when they're interested, you're like, okay, tell me more about that. Or that was really cool. What if? Those are really great. I think it's always better to have a good conversation at the end, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you do? How do you stay inspired? How do you continue to grow and evolve in what you're doing?
So I have this like really, a personal passion of just like my two fears are being basic and staying still. And
Uh-huh.
so those keep me fueled very well. I kind of mentioned I have, a network of communities, various ones, along with coaches and therapists and people that I can lean in. And I am working really hard, and I have been for the past year, of finding time to take breaks, to take pauses throughout my day, and learning that there's actually, working smarter, not harder, is actually where the beauty is. And for me, that's getting offline, whether it's sketching and not bringing my computer somewhere and doing some sketches or thinking through things. I do a lot of reading about data science, about neuroscience, but also just about personal growth. So again, my mind is always fresh, and I'm thinking and using tactics differently. And then it's working out as well. So again, it's creating that mental and physical wellness space for me that really helps me stay inspired. And then there's always like a blogs that I listen to, or there's a couple
Yeah.
magazines that I grab at the library that like design wise, but really it's
Hmm.
about getting outside of this industry to then fuel myself to get back into it.
And I think it's brilliant that you listen to like neuroscience and things like that, because all of that has something to do with how we present and how information is received and how we can be effective. So I love that stuff as well. I love to listen to books where I'm learning something about why people make the decisions that they make, and how why do people buy versus not buy, and
Yeah.
what leads people into a decision to do business with you. Like, I love that stuff, because for me, it I would much rather connect with someone who wants to collaborate and do business. Like, I go into everything as a partnership, right? So
Uh-huh.
even though I am their vendor, I'm also their partner, because I don't want to just be an order taker. I feel like the collaboration is where all the magic happens.
I couldn't have said that better myself. Yeah, totally. And to your
Yeah.
point, it's like once you can understand people better, or know why or
Hmm.
how they function, you can help them better. You can
Yeah.
solve their problems easier. Like when I know, and I can better understand how we and humans digest information. I mean, the fact that we're 65% more likely to retain information when it's visually designed,
Yeah.
that fact alone fuels me in how I lay things out so simply, of like, You don't just need a page with 3 bullets, like put the bullets in a line and design them and put a break group between them. And you've got a beautiful slide that looks
Yeah.
so different with the right amount of information, or with the same amount of information. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
neuroscience is really cool. I geek out about that for
Me
sure.
too. Me too. I have a psychology degree, so every time I'm
Okay.
like even like things like what is it? Never Split the Difference, a book on negotiation. Like I love this stuff because to me, like I love the idea that you can negotiate with someone and you can both walk away getting what you want because that
Yeah.
person wants to do business with you again. You haven't burned
Yeah.
bridges, you
Yeah.
haven't been there. I'm digging my heels in. It's going to be my way or the highway. Like that doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you long-term relationships. You want that trusted partner. And so, yeah, so things like that, I geek out on
I
that
love that
too.
you say that, because I used to think when I first started my business and working alone that I always put all this pressure on myself to show up to every creative review,
Mm,
whatever kind of work it was, with a perfectly polished, like I, to your point, I wanted them to have no issues. I wanted them to be like, yes, we
yeah,
buy it. And
yeah,
now my whole process is collaboration. We're going to jump in and it's going to be a little messy the first 2 reviews because you're going to see my work in progress and I'm going to show you options. Or today a client was like, I like that, but like, what happens if we did it in this color? And I was like, okay, let's look at it. Like, that's
yeah,
why we have this time. I want you to be part of the process. I don't know your business and I'm learning, but you're the expert. And if we can work together, everybody feels heard. And when you feel heard, you feel valued. And to your point, that's what a successful relationship is really about.
absolutely. Absolutely. When we go into any kind of partnership or any kind of like relationship with a new let's just say a venue, a concert venue, or doing security for an event, I always say like this is a work in progress, because I
Yeah.
used to be such a perfectionist where I had to be perfect or else everything that I promised them was going to be garbage, right? Like they'll
Uh-huh.
never trust me if we don't deliver at 100% and we're perfect. So like now I go into it, I'm like, look, I need grace for the first 2 times, right? Like I
Yeah.
need grace. We're going to mess up. I want to get this right for you. So I need you to just communicate every time we do something wrong, every time we do something right. Like I want to know what you're thinking at all times so that I can then adjust and I can, move forward from there. But like that continuous collaboration back and forth, I think is so key. Like I used to make
Uh,
all these promises of like, oh, it'll be perfect. It's the best you've ever had. It's going to be this. It's going to be this. And now I'm like, we are going to work together to come up with the perfect solution.
yes, I love that. Right. Well, I put it all on you because,
Yeah,
to be honest, what they're thinking is going to be perfect and what you're thinking is going to be perfect are so different anyway. So,
absolutely.
to your point, to meet them somewhere is like such a win-win for everybody. And it takes a lot of that. I'm a recovering perfectionist too. So I get
Uh-huh.
that. I feel that. So
Yes, yeah. Well, and a lot of it, the perfectionism comes from imposter syndrome, like
yes.
when you feel like, maybe I don't belong in this room, you're going to make all these inflated promises, you're going to have this pressure to be perfect, and now like I've gone beyond imposter syndrome. Like I know we're good at what we do, right? And so I think that actually helps me to ask for grace from the beginning because I'm also a realist now and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I know things are going to go a little bit wrong, or you may not be like over the moon with us in the beginning, but I just need you to talk to me about it. If we talk about it, we get through it, we set expectations properly, we move on. And so that has helped so much in building
I
those
love
trusted
that.
relationships.
Yeah, that's so insightful. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. So what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Oh, stay curious
Oh,
and
yeah, that's a
keep,
good one.
yeah, just like, and keep asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all the beauty is in the questions, right? I think so many times we're afraid to ask the questions and then we go through making assumptions and just ask the questions. And
Yeah,
yeah,
for
I
sure.
love that. So as women, we give our power away all the time in different ways, whether that might be giving somebody else credit for our work or just not stepping into our power and a chance that we had an opportunity to. Is there a time that you gave your power away, or is there a time that you stepped into your power that you want to talk about?
I feel like I have stepped into my power just in the past year as this PowerPoint queen is like my
Really?
one of my handles is in social media. But yeah, I think I read a book by John Detner called The 15 Commitments of a Conscious Leader. And
Ooh,
through it, I was really like, it felt like he was talking to me. It's one of those books.
yeah.
And I got to the point where he talks about your zone of genius. And your zone of genius is this space where you do work that illuminates you in a way that nothing else does. And
Ooh,
then you can shine that outward. And I have always been somebody who I loved helping people. I loved building their confidence. I loved making people smile in any way. And whether it was like giving away my power by all my energy and saying yes to everything or whatever that was. And I realized that this is my zone of genius because it lights me up. I feel so confident. I believe in the work. I love doing it in this crazy, weird PowerPoint world that I used to think was a bad word. And now I love it. Right. And I geek out about the data science and how we connect. And then the best part is now I can be part of the solution to help somebody else be more confident in their work. And this world is wild. And I feel like somebody recently said, we're living in the twilight zone. And if I can, I'm not going to change the world with PowerPoint, but if I can help somebody else smile and change their world or make their job a little easier so they can do their work better, that's an amazing win.
Well, and it's a win for the people who are listening to the people, because honestly, like, who doesn't want to have a great storyteller in front of them? Like, I'll listen all day to somebody who's a really good storyteller versus somebody who's just information dumping on me, right? So like, I want to know the story. I want to know the vulnerabilities. I want to know what made you want to do this? Why are you here? What created this human being in front of me? Like, I want to know all these things. I don't just want to know what you're selling. I want to know why you're selling it. So yeah. No, I think it makes it enjoyable for the person on the other side, not just the person doing the presentation.
Right. So it's like this ripple effect, and it all starts. And again, it's like this concept of your zone of genius and being this thing that illuminates you. And so that I have stepped into that. I've owned it. I use that term. I know this is my magical knack, and I love that I get to share it with people.
Oh, that is so cool. I wish we would all get to that place where we feel like we are in our zone of genius, because I just love that phrase.
I think you can. I think it takes being curious, and it takes the work, and it it was not an all upward journey for sure. And it's still not. It's definitely a process, but it's a great ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Emily, this has been such a fun conversation. I hate that it's coming to a close because you are just so interesting and fun to talk to.
Oh, thank you so much, Angela. It was so great to be here. I loved it too.
Yes. So one more question for you. What do you wish more people knew?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that the power of kindness can just like really help everybody.
Yes. Yes. Amen to that. Yeah, I agree. We could all be a little bit more kind to each other. It's amazing what'll happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. This has been such a pleasure. So where can people find you?
Yes. So my website is a great place to start to learn more about my work, see some examples. That is IamEmilySchneider.com. I also want to give a little plug that I have a free resources tab on there. So you can download my one pager, which talks about some of the tips that we went through about how to craft a presentation. And you also can get access to my webinar and watch that video. So where I do some training again. So a little bit more of how to apply these principles into your own world. But I also am on LinkedIn, and I love connecting and networking on there too.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. And again, you've been a pleasure to talk to, and I've just learned a ton as I'm actually doing some PowerPoint presentations now. So this has been super helpful for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so nice to be here.
Absolutely. So we will see you guys all on Pretty Powerful Podcast next time. And if you want to check out Emily Schneider, she's also going to be on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.